Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Touchline Table Talk. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo alongside you guys. Yes, this isn't a Milan-based podcast. I just had to break out my Ronaldinho kit. There was some trend on Instagram, TikTok that I had to jump on, so I did it. I took a picture for it. Do you know how rare that is for me to do that? Anyway, Santangelo, we're back. We appreciate every single one of you. Record episode last week, over 600 views. We appreciate every single one of you. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Obviously, this is going to be collaborated with our That Milan podcast channel. Again, do not forget to download or even watch on the audio side of things. We need some plays there. But other than that, we are super amped to talk more on certain topics. And Matt, this one is going to start off with your boy, Robert Lewandowski. So basically his future is kind of up in the air as far as what team he plays for next year, leaving Barcelona. He has been linked to Milan, Juventus. He's been linked to Saudi. He's been linked to Chicago with the MLS. Where is Robert Lewandowski going to be playing football next season?
That's the question everyone is asking, right? Because this is such a prolific striker in a market where a lot of big clubs are going to need strikers, right? And despite being near 40, this is still, in my opinion, one of the better strikers that is going to be available this upcoming summer. And he's going to have a bevy of options, right? He's not staying at Barcelona. There have been talks about him going to Serie A with Juventus and Milan, probably being priced out. So that leaves you Saudi or MLS. Saudi, we know that money is no issue. They'll give him an opportunity to play at a relatively competitive level, and some of the teams are being propped up and built up to a point where he'll be around quality players. And then there's the MLS avenue, which I think is probably where he's going to wind up going. Because if you revert back to what was said by his wife in 2016, 2017, that they envision their future, the end of their career in America. And we know that there's only a select few options that would, one, appeal to a player like Lewandowski and his wife with a global brand, someone that maybe wants to get into film and other commercial opportunities, right? I think there's a real good chance that he actually winds up in MLS with one of the LA teams. Now, we'll have to wait and see, right? That report was years ago, right? Things can change, money can change, opportunities can change and be presented differently. But I think MLS is a real possibility for him because I think that, the schedule might not be as grueling and intense as European football will be, and even in Saudi. But I think it would still give him the opportunity to, make good money, have the opportunities off the pitch, but also still have that room to play for the Polish national team if he still chooses to do so.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty obvious situation regarding him that if he wanted to compete in UEFA competitions or whatever league he would go in, he would take a pay cut to do so. And it's very evident that he is unwilling to do that based on all reports coming out of Italy and essentially everywhere else. I don't think it makes any sense for him to go to Saudi, considering a multitude of things. The pay will probably be best there. But if they're talking about in their past that they would rather play or live in America, it makes far more sense to go and do that because Saudi, it's still relatively competitive. And within that region, it's obviously not in Europe, but you're not far off from it. You're still in a bigger limelight. If I was him, I would either go to Juve or Milan easily, but that's just me. There's still good money to be had. It's just you've been at Barca, you've been at Bayern, you've been getting paid top dollar all the time. If you want more money, fine, I get it. Like I will never tell players not to do that. There's a finite timeline to be making this sort of money at this level. Chicago's been interested. The LA teams, he seems like a slam dunk at LA Galaxy player. Obviously not heading to Miami to go and play with Messi and them. New York City never gets involved with this kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty disappointing. I think they should be, but yeah, I think Lewandowski is going to be in the MLS as soon as post World Cup or however long he wants to take to recuperate for himself. It makes sense on so many different levels. If he went to Chicago, it would be fascinating. It would be the second Bayern legend to go and do so behind Bastian Schweinsteiger. I am not fully convinced of that. I think if they move somewhere in the United States, I think he'll be an LA Galaxy player, but that's just me and my opinion. So moving on to future stars. This guy has taken the world by storm. We saw it a couple years ago with Endrick in Brazil, and we saw what a sensation he was at a
Yeah.
physical and technical level as a teenager. Went over to Real Madrid. A lot of it is from the philosophy of Florentino Perez refusing to have another Neymar situation where it
Yeah.
was a youth superstar Brazilian that walked out the door. We see the Vinicius Jr. And plenty of other talent going there. Endrick was breaking records, and what I've seen from him this year at Lyon, if anyone has had the opportunity to do so, there is just no way in hell that you could sit there and tell me the best avenue for this kid is away from Real Madrid and not being a focal point of that project. Now, I think Madrid have collected a lot of talent and a lot of young talent at that. And I don't think that they know what to do with them in terms of tactical prowess and all these other aspects where you're trying to compete with the Fede Valverde's, Rudiger's, Mbappe's, Vinicius
Established
Juniors
stars.
of the
Yeah.
world. Like they're proven key stars that are in the prime of their careers and are trying to win the Champions League. Whereas you look over at Endrick, Arda Güler, I mean, obviously Jude Bellingham has done it all already, but he is still incredibly young. People still forget that. The avenue for Real Madrid to take here is Endrick being their star because he's already flourishing at a pretty big club in France
Yeah.
with Paulo Fonseca and Lyon. The time is now. You have to rip off this band-aid. You can't keep babying a player like this. Sure, there's going to be growing pains because of his age. He's proven it. Physically, he's capable of it. Technical ability, playing on the European level. He makes impacts coming off the bench as a player, even for Real Madrid.
Mhm.
Stop wasting your time. Endrick is now. He's not the future. It's the current moment. Should Real Madrid make Endrick the focal point of their project, Matt?
Absolutely. I mean, Endrick has proven this entire season at Lyon in a very short season that he is next up. He is that next big superstar that Real Madrid should invest time, resources, and a project in, right? 5 goals, 7 assists in around 15 appearances for the French side. He's delivering at such a high level at 19. But when you watch him play, it's not just the numbers, right? We talk so much about numbers and production from forward players, and that's fine. And that's a lot of times what they're measured by. But the way he's doing it, he's outclassing French football, and he's doing it seemingly overnight, right? This is a player that's outperforming those around him. And I think when you look at where Real Madrid are potentially headed, in as far as in a position where they might need to
Right.
shake things up in that attacking department, I think if you're Endrick and you really have aspirations of making it at Real Madrid and being a reference point within that next team going forward, I think you need to put it on your agent and say, hey, I need Real Madrid to
Right.
show me that they're investing in me and they want me here as a focal point to this project. Otherwise, I'm going somewhere else and force their hand, because you see the friction with Vinny. You see what's going on with Mbappe. Rodrigo was even mentioned to a potential move last summer. So I think they quite clearly are in need of a shakeup. And I think what way better than to initiate that shakeup and rebuild than Endrick, who is ready for you to take the next step.
Yeah, I cannot stand this Real Madrid exceptionalism that developing a core for the future is beneath them, as if it prevents them from winning at
Yeah.
any point. You have all the resources in the world, you have tons of talent, not only young talent, it's talent that it proven can win now, right?
Right.
Like Barca has a good mix of that. They don't put it, it's not beneath them. City do the same thing. And I understand Real Madrid have had so much success, and that's obvious. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to build those Galactico teams that made so much sense with
Mhm.
Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the best midfielders we've seen with Cruz, Modric, Casemiro. You can't do that at this current moment in time. And bringing in someone like Jose Mourinho, and this is something I keep on harping on, that's going backwards. That isn't the forward movement. Xabi Alonso has been vindicated. Our good friend Adrian Rabona of Rabona TV even mentioned this in his videos. Like, Xabi clearly wasn't the problem. You
Yeah.
can't just keep on sacking managers, bringing new ones in and winning in the short term, and then having to redo this time and time again, where you had to go back and get Ancelotti, you had to go back and get Zidane because things were not working out. And then you want to sit there and say, okay, well, we don't know what to do because our situation's in flux. Let's just go get Jose Mourinho. You're going to be running out of legendary managers that will even want to go take that job. And to think that Mourinho can just come in and just completely change things when he already had friction with these players, with that incident that just happened a couple of months ago with Vinny. So to sit there and think that, Endrick's future might be a little dicey. This wouldn't even be a question for any other club in the world about putting this player in and having him be a success. But for some reason at Real Madrid, we have to do things differently just because we have all these Champions League. No, stop that. You're going down a path that is eerily reminiscent of what was happening in the mid to late 2000s, where you were spiraling out of control and then Barcelona took everything. Where, yes, you had the names, you had the stars on paper, but things blew up in your face. This has been well documented. Real Madrid, as great as they can be, as they're still one of the best teams in the world, you have to rip off the Band-Aid. I actually think a scenario in which you're getting rid of the Rodrigos of the world in Mbappe or a Vinny, one of the two, and then just having the focal point be Jude, be Güler, be Endrick, and then if Nico Paz, who we'll talk about, has an opportunity to come in, you have to go down that route. That is insane talent. You can make it work, and you build with other stars around that. To think it's just so beneath you and you're messing with this kid's future, it's not to say that he's going to want out because it's still Real Madrid, right?
Mhm.
You're still putting him in a really difficult position at this point in his career where you're right. He has to ask the questions. Should I be staying here? Is this the best long-term fit? What's
Yeah.
your plan for me? Because you bought me for a lot of money, and next thing you know, even though it's probably in the best interest that he went to Lyon this year,
Mhm.
what is the plan for the future? Because
I
you
also
kind of
think
see how
too.
is do you, like, sorry to but
Yeah.
this is a question for you. Like, look at what they did with Jude. Jude was incredible that first year.
Yeah.
And now, not to say he's regressed, you haven't put him in the best position to succeed. Do you trust that with Endrick? Is the real question. I don't trust Real Madrid with Endrick fully. I think it'll be okay because talent wins. I just don't trust this plan. I think it's all over the place.
I think what we've seen from Endrick this season at Lyon, compounded with the fact that Barcelona have just won La Liga, and at the center of that La Liga triumph was Lamine Yamal, a teenager. I think that in a way, Real Madrid and Barcelona operate in such a way and manner that they're trying to battle for the center of the universe. And when you have Lamine Yamal doing what he's doing on a regular basis for Barcelona, I think if you're Real Madrid and you're Perez, you're looking at it and thinking like, how can we kind of shift some of that attention and I guess I don't know how to phrase it, back to us, back to Real Madrid, right?
Right.
Because truthfully,
Momentum. Yeah.
that's how a lot of those big clubs operate, right? They're going to bring in attractions, right? It's not just football; it's entertainment. It's the value that you bring as Real Madrid, right? Okay, hey, we got Endrick,
I think
Goulet,
they're more about the stars than
we got
style.
all
Yeah.
these players. Like we need to show the wider world that we are Real Madrid, and despite Barcelona just winning the title and being ahead of us right now, we
Right.
have guys like Endrick, Goulet, guys coming up that we can kind of really battle with them in the next years to come.
Well, that's the whole thing is that, Barca and why they've over the course of the past 20 years, despite managerial changes, Messi walking out the
Financial
door,
issues.
legendary financial issues to a degree, right? Like they're still able to spend a lot of money, right? But
Of
I know
course.
what you mean. The point is relative to Real Madrid, they have like a system set up in place that they're able to put in guys like Endrick and
Mhm.
or sorry, not Endrick, sorry, Lamine Yamal, which is the point back to Endrick and Real Madrid is like Real Madrid still don't have a comprehensive plan
Right.
to usher in a new era that they're trying to fit all these different pieces. I think they're sorely missing guys who are leaders
Yeah.
that can carry in the next generation of players. Where Vinny is a volatile personality, like we just talked about it last episode. These guys are kung fu fighting
Yeah.
against each other in training. This is not leadership. You're losing guys like Luka Modric going out the door. I'm not saying it's like Milan level bad when you're transitioning out of that era, but that stuff matters. You could have all the talent in the world. You need leaders at the end of the day. You need a system in place. You need a program. I don't think Real Madrid have a few of those things at this current moment because you're changing managers. Denny Carvajal is another guy who's walking out the door. Rudiger has obviously shown he's not that type of leader, but losing someone like Modric, Tony Cruz, that's a lot of leadership walking out
Yeah.
that door. Whereas, Vinny is not kind of viewed that way. He's viewed as immature. We know the stories about Mbappe. Jude, a little too young, not the proven superstar within Real Madrid to kind of supplant those guys and say, no, stop. I'm taking the lead here. I think there's like too many cooks with similar personalities and not a singular player to usher in that new generation of
Yeah,
leadership.
I
Like
agree.
a Fede Valverde, who I thought would have been one of those guys, Camavinga and Tchouaméni, to an extent, have kind of stalled in their ascension into Real Madrid stardom. There is not something utterly rotten in Real Madrid, but there's a lot of things in flux, and I'm not sure that's the best environment for Endrick. Although the thing is, they hold the cards, they
Yep.
have the player, and it's sort of like if you want Endrick, you're probably going to have to pay 100 million for him at least, which I think what he
Probably
should
it's
do.
worth it in this market,
I
truly.
if again, this
At
wouldn't
19
happen with
years old,
our
like,
club. This wouldn't happen with our club, but like legitimately, I'd be like, if they
yeah,
told me 100 million, it was
I
my entire budget. I can't
yep.
sign anyone else. I literally would sign him.
I
I think
know.
he's that good. I think he's that good.
And I think that
Um,
the one thing with Real Madrid, and we can move on,
sure,
is
yeah.
to speak on the sort of squad dynamic, right? Where in years past, when they were succeeding and winning every trophy, sweeping across the board, you looked like departmentally speaking, you looked at, in defense, you had Ramos, you had Pepe, strong personalities that are like leader personalities.
Yeah,
In that
exactly.
midfield, Casemiro, Cruz,
Everywhere,
Modric,
everywhere.
Carvajal, everywhere. You feel like with this Real Madrid team going forward, there's a lot more passengers than there are drivers, players that you can look and say, hey, this is, this guy might not be the best player going, or might not be at his peak, but there's a clear hierarchy of, okay, that's the guy that we look to avoid these sort of disasters that we're seeing with Real
Yeah.
Madrid, right? And I think, again, it just really goes to show you that it's not just the quality that a team brings in. They have to gel, mesh, and to figure out a way to coexist, because when things go tough, this is what you see, right? Frustration, anger, those things build up, and you see fights, and you see what
Literal
you
literal
struggle with.
assault, yeah.
Yeah,
It's insane, so it's a
yeah.
lot, I've never seen anything like it. It's gonna have to be a new revolution at Real Madrid. I'm not saying it'll get drastically worse, but I don't think things are going to be improving like that, especially if you're listening to players and you're kicking guys like Xabi Alonso out the door, who's been vindicated again, just getting that clear. Speaking of more players that will be going back to Real Madrid, or so we think, Nico Paz, Kenan Yildiz, we're obviously huge Serie A guys. These have been the two super young superstars that have taken the league by storm the past 2 seasons. Much has been made in comparisons, right? Because Nico Paz is just this super do-it-all, wonderful midfielder talent that's in this new mold and project under Cesc Fabregas, and then we'll get into Kenan Yildiz in a second. Nico Paz does it all for Como, and I think everybody knows that. I think last year was probably a better season than this one, but this one I think has gone under the radar for some people because the collective of Como has shown once again that they're so good. Duvicas is one of these like fantastic scorers, and there's so many other.
Mhm.
Baturina is like another fun guy to watch with Como, but they have like so many players that I think Nico Paz gets a little bit lost in this. And I think some people are like kind of saying, he hasn't had the same sort of consistency as last year. This guy does it all. And I know the comparison between Paz and Yildiz is a little bit unfair because Yildiz is either a 10 or a far better like left winger. I think he's so dynamic as a left winger, whereas Paz is more central. He's a little bit more box to box, doing more of all the dirty work. It's not to say that Kenan Yildiz can't do that, but Yildiz is obviously a forward. It's about end product. These guys are studs. They're incredible. They're super talents. If Nico Paz can manage to stay in Serie A, that's a big win for the league. Obviously, an L for Milan. Um, for you though, do you think this comparison is silly between the two, or do you have a preference? So I'll ultimately lay this question out for you. If you were to
Mhm.
start a team today and you have no players, are you selecting Nico Paz first or Kenan Yildiz?
Man, that's a tough one. I think I would have to go in the direction slightly of Nico Paz, because I think the way that Como is set up, the entire team runs through Nico Paz. As a number 10, the pure playmaker within that team, not to mention he has roots to Real Madrid, right? Where coming over to Italian football, which isn't very friendly and favorable to young
Yeah.
playmakers, right? It could be very humbling for young players to come in here who have this sort of success and potential to be difference makers in the final third, right? Where that's where the big money's made. I think that what we've seen from Nico Paz in his second year, compounded where Como are headed, right? A team that just booked their first European competition berth, right? They could go as high as, I think, Champions League, but at a minimum, they're going to be in the Conference League, which again, it speaks to
They could do great there.
what they're building, right? So I think the way that Nico Paz plays feels like that sort of classic number 10 that we've seen in years past in Serie A, that we don't really see that much in Serie A now.
And in the whole sport, really.
Right, in the whole sport. And I just think the way that he plays the game, the way that he kind of goes about business is purely professional, but there's so much maturity in that 21-year-old Nico Paz. Whereas I think with Kenny Yildiz, fantastic player. There's obviously no judgment on him as a personality, because I don't think he's shown any inclination of being sort of self-absorbed and very
He's a very mature kid.
The way he plays is very mature. He plays more on that left side, but I'd argue, as things stand right now, that Juventus doesn't run their entire team through Kenan Yildiz, because they have a lot of big personalities, other star players, other figureheads within that team. So I think for that reason, I'd probably go with Nico Paz if I was starting a team and I had the choice of the two.
So for me, I'll break down each player and then I'll give my thing. Yeah. This is how you should do it. For me, Nico, like, it's an unfair comparison, and I'm the one who brought up the subject anyways, but it's a topic within Serie A. So for me, we'll start with Paz. Paz is a lost treasure, lost art within the sport, as you were mentioning, right? We see guys who have similarities of a number 10, but they can't necessarily do everything. So when I think of a number 10, a classical number 10, they're capable of doing some defensive work. It's not their priority, but they work hard. They're also fantastic in the final third. They can score and they can assist. But it just doesn't stop there. Their passing ability is a huge part of why they're so dynamic and great dribblers. I think Paz is really that. I think both of them are. And again, I'll get into that. With Nico Paz, too, the other thing that separates him from me is set pieces, too. He's fantastic at dead ball situations. On top of that, the work rate is second to none. When you have him on the pitch, you don't have to question a singular thing about him. Sure, there's some inconsistencies. The level of his teammates' play might not be at his level at sometimes, but they're a young core. It's a little bit different to kind of, judge him within that system, because there's guys still developing. Como's a very interesting project like that. So with Paz, if you're building out through the midfield, I have no questions about him and how good he is. However, with Kenan Yildiz, to win games, you need guys who could score and create at elite levels.
Team breakers.
This is that type of player. He's younger, and for me, I would pick Yildiz. And it has nothing to do with Nico Paz. It has everything to do with how good Yildiz is. There's a lot more pressure playing at Juventus, being the number 10, the focal point of that project, even though sometimes the system doesn't play in a part with that. He's had no strikers. Tuvi is the better striker than anything that Juve has. The right side, it's Conceição. Sometimes it's like other players, Zegrova in the last second of games. Yildiz has been that guy. He takes guys on. He's too passive where he needs to be more aggressive, right? Because his forwards don't help him out. Yildiz is a great dribbler. He's very dynamic. I think he's a more athletic Kvaratskhelia. I think he's far more aggressive and direct than Rafael Leao can be. I think he's the best of both worlds out of all those players. Now, he needs to provide more consistency. I think his 2026 has fallen off just a little bit, but that's okay for someone at his age and the club he's in. But Yildiz, man, I think this could be one of the best wingers in the world. The only winger under the age of 23 better than him is arguably the best player in the world, and that's Lamine Yamal. I think he's in that conversation eventually, will be for best Serie A player, one of the best wingers in the world that we're going to be talking about for years and years to come. But if I'm starting a team, it's Yildiz simply because of the output. But Nico Paz is not far behind, and I know he's a little bit older, so that's how people look at it. I don't think he can go wrong, but if I start a team today, I'm going with Kenan Yildiz because he's that much of a superstar, in my opinion.
I think
Matt, go ahead if you have a final point.
For both these players, right, I think they really check off a lot of the boxes that you look for in influential final third players, right? They have technique. The first touch is there. They can take their guy on, dribble. They're selfless in the way they go about, the way they play football. They're willing to press. They're willing to track back. They're willing to do a lot of things that are not the tangible metrics that you can weigh as far as productivity, right? I think just getting back to the maturity side and how advanced they are despite being very young is the composure, the calm, the sense of time standing still when they're in those positions of impact, where you look at a player that goes forward and you're like, okay, cool, they're in the final third. They're able to make that opportunity, right? They do everything right to get into the position where they are supposed to pounce. And it's an errant pass, it's an errant shot. When you look at Paz and Yildiz in those positions, there's like real calm and serenity with the way they play, where it's
Yeah.
you almost trust them to pick the right pass, to make the right decision
At their ages, too.
at their ages, which again I think speaks to what I think Serie A can do for a young player. For all the criticism Serie A gets,
Right.
I think
Yeah.
it creates that environment where you have to be methodical and you have to be
Right.
more of a strategist when you come into those positions, because these defenses are very difficult to break down. So the fact that you have these two in this conversation as being not just two of Serie A's best young players, two of Serie A's best players, period, and arguably
Yeah.
1, 2, however you want to put them.
Yeah, and the final note on them for me is the maturity levels are beyond their years.
Yeah.
Just as how they conduct themselves. If you listen to interviews with Yildiz speaks multiple languages already. I know Nico Paz, I'm not sure he speaks English as well as Yildiz does, but they're just consummate professionals. They obviously come from both academies that are incredible, and Bayern and Real Madrid has very much improved theirs. They have very, very, very bright futures ahead of them. I think if Real Madrid didn't lock themselves into Vinny and all these other players, these two should be on the same team and they would be dynamic. But again, Matt goes Paz, I go Yildiz. Final topic of the day. We're sticking in Italy. Bastoni to Barcelona. This one is kind of quieted as time has gone on. The noise was very, very, very loud after Bastoni's red card against Bosnia.
Mhm.
But then again, Inter come back. They have just won the double yesterday after their Coppa Italia win. So for Bastoni, it's kind of one of these things where if Italy just missed the World Cup for the first time, I think he easily gets pushed out, much easier. When it's 3 times in a row, and I've thought about this, and I thought for sure Bastoni was leaving, that 3 times is a systemic problem. It's a multiple people problem, right?
Mhm.
We can sit there and blame Bastoni for that situation and loss, but there's plenty of others. I think once you return home, he got the support that he got
Yeah.
from his fans, excuse me, at Inter, that you win another trophy, you're still a focal point of a project. Barcelona don't have the cash that they're willing to dish out that's over 70 million. Everything I'm reading and seeing is 50, 55 million. There's no way in hell Inter are doing that. There's no way that I think Bastoni ends up going to do that. I actually think he's one of those players that wouldn't put Inter in a position to take less money like that. I
Right.
don't think Inter should accept it. I think it's laughable if Barcelona can only muster up that much. Anything under 70 million for Bastoni is a joke. 70 million should be the starting point, in my opinion, to talk about a player like this. Ultimately, after his red card against Bosnia, I would have told you Bastoni is going to Barcelona. But the more that time passes, I think Bastoni is going to stay at Inter. But ultimately, Matt, do you think Bastoni heads to Barcelona this summer?
After consideration of, what we've seen play out post Italy's failure to qualify for a third straight World Cup, with him being at the very heart of that failure, I think that he definitely is going to be staying at Inter, and I have a couple reasons as to why I feel that way. So the way that he was welcomed back and had that sort of wrapping of the arms around him by the fans, by the club, I think speaks to institutionally what Inter have created and why they are able to sort of get past a lot of those potential issues that can arise when it comes to big clubs coming in for their top players, right? There were moments where people were saying this might be the end for Lautaro, this might be the end for Taram, right? Because of, maybe struggling seasons or, maybe
Right.
it being time. And then you realize and you hear what these players have to say about Inter and how the team is set up. They feel very much embraced, right? And I think that is no different with Bastoni, right? Where you mention it coming out of that game against Bosnia, everyone and their mother was saying he's
Dead
out of
man walking. Yeah.
Barcelona, right? Inter are struggling. Inter were in a position, mind you, at that time where the Scudetto wasn't even fully wrapped up. So
Yep.
you kind of throw everything into a pot, and logically you think, okay, this is the end, right? I look at how Inter were able to sort of navigate that difficult period as a team that just won the Serie A title, right? That also just won a Coppa Italia to pull off the domestic double. And Bastoni is still a figurehead within that team that is probably going to be changing quite a bit this summer with Acerbi getting older and leaving. Stefan de Vrij, like
Yeah, there's at least half a dozen players
right. So
guaranteed
this
to
is
leave.
this
Yeah,
is going to be a pivotal summer for that project, and I think for that reason, I think it would be irresponsible. I'd go as far as saying it would be irresponsible for Inter to sell
right.
at a fraction or at a lower price,
Yeah, it's a
knowing that
low point.
they're gonna need a lot of changes potentially in certain areas of their team. And I think you're gonna need a player like Bastoni who has been battle tested, has been through a difficult season, but has come out on the other end of that as a player that is still very much considered a leader on that team, and also someone that has just won 2
Right.
trophies that Christian Kivu is going to be relying on.
They're also getting like a Cherby, De Vrij, Bisek are all potentially on the chopping block.
Right.
I really think the guarantees are Akanji and Bastoni at this moment in time. I think they should absolutely get rid of those three. I think Bisek would be the guy
Yeah.
that you can cash in on the most. The other two are over the hill. Mkhitaryan is another player as well that I think is going to go out the door. If I was Inter, I sell Bisek and Marcus Thuram and don't even think twice about it, and try and keep Hakan in the longer term. Still try and get younger and more dynamic outside of that because they are an aging squad. There's rumors of Carlos Augusto also leaving. There's no guarantees that they stick to a 3-5-2. There's a lot of things going on with that. Yeah, and simply like it's Barcelona are not coming in with an offer that blows them away.
That is
That's
substantial.
ultimately the thing. Because if Inter get an offer that they're like, okay, this is like actually incredible money, it's record breaking money,
Right.
we should probably consider making this deal. Barca haven't indicated, or there haven't been any reports stating like, yeah, they're going to break the bank for Bastoni. And so if they're not willing to do that, they're not going to sell him on a low. Just like I don't think Milan or other clubs are going to be selling their players at their lowest point because it just doesn't make any sense financially. Sure, when Tonali gets offers for record money with Newcastle,
Definitely.
when Lukaku coming in getting record money offers, where Marotta is also selling Andre Onana to Manchester United for like record money and turning that around. And also that's another position Inter have to replace. It's probably going to be Josep Martinez next year for goalkeeper. They just have to get blown away by offers, which is how and why I respect so much in what Inter are doing in their project, even as a Milan fan, is like they draw a line with their top players. If you don't meet this point, fine, we'll keep them. We'll pay them.
They did
That's
it
not a
with Barella.
problem.
They did it with
They've
Barella
done it with Barella,
in
Bastoni,
2023
Lautaro.
when
Lautaro with Barca.
Newcastle, yeah, when Newcastle were coming in for Barella the same summer that Milan sold Sandro Tonali, they approached, according to I think it was James Horncastle of the Athletic, saying
Right.
that Newcastle actually approached Inter first for Barella.
Yeah.
You tabled an offer that was substantial, and they line in the sand. We
Yeah.
are not selling this
Yeah.
player. They went to Milan. Milan said, yeah, we're kind of warming to the idea. We would sell Tonali for the right price, kept raising their offer, and they folded, and Milan sold them. And we've seen what happens after that. So I think, yeah, like I think it speaks to, you know, the strong hands and the firmness that Inter have at a management level where they can identify who their top players are and say, unless you're giving me an offer that is simply too good to pass up, we are not selling this player. And I think that's a testament to what the players also believe with the project, because
Right.
the Barcelona money is very appealing. The idea that I can play for a team that of that stature that
Right.
just won La Liga can very much move a player. But I think Bastoni is going to stay for this team.
Yeah. I think and the last point is I think a lot of these conversations were driven by the fact that Oaktree and private equity own Inter at this current moment
Yeah.
in time. But the CEO is still Beppe Marotta, which
Right.
again is why I always reiterated to Inter fans that were a bit worried was that, the figureheads that made Inter so successful in these past, like, however many years since Marotta joined
Yeah.
and Osilo, all these guys in Zanetti being involved, is that they kept the status quo. They were trusted by ownership to see out their job and work within the confines of their restrictions. Maybe they come in and Oaktree's like, okay, we need to cut back a little bit, but they've wiped their debts. Their runs to the Champions
Yeah,
League final have basically paid off all these issues that they would have had, whereas like Milan are in the opposite direction. It's very reminiscent to me of what was happening in the early 2000s, where, Milan were a far better run club and they were more ambitious and made more sense, whereas Inter were like spending money, but they kept fumbling and messing things up. Because if you go back and look, then like Inter were paying insane amounts like it's not the same as today, but
Mhm.
within Italy, Milan are spending a ton of money and still foiling their own plans.
Yeah.
But this is why Inter have been the best team in Italy for the past few years, and they just won the domestic double. So again, guys, we appreciate every single one of you that have tuned in, appreciated, and given us comments on these topics. We're
Yeah.
actually very surprised and happy with how this has been going so far. So again, trying to do this once a week, plus our social clips. You can go follow Matt everywhere at Matt_Santangelo, on Twitter at Matt_Santa22. Like, subscribe, give us some views on this channel, on all your thoughts. Again, you could follow me at Martino Pucci on Twitter and at Martino Puccio every single other place and platform where you get your social media content. So again, thank you guys so much. This was Touchline Table Talks. Until then, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.